We dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan to end World War II, right? You might quibble with that. You might think that was a war crime. You might think that was a horrific evil. It wasn't a genocide, and no one calls it a genocide. We vaporized 100,000 people instantaneously, and then we killed another 100,000 slowly by radiation poisoning and fire and infection. No one calls that a genocide. No serious person calls that a genocide, and no human rights organization calls that a genocide. Amnesty International does not call that a genocide. But do you know what they call the war in Gaza? A genocide, right? So that's the moral confusion. We know our dropping atomic bombs on Japan wasn't a genocide because what did we do after Japan surrendered? We went in there and we occupied them and we rebuilt their society. And by 1952, when we left, they had ceased to be our enemies. They were our allies, right? At no point did anyone think that our goal was to eradicate the world of Japanese people, right? So that's what a genocide is, the eradication project. If you're going to confuse the sheer awfulness of war with genocide, right? If you're going to conflate those two concepts, right, then you're just, I mean, people think that somehow dumbing down the definition of genocide to mean simply too much death and destruction in war, whatever pains the parties took to avoid such death and destruction, right? Not doing any of the moral math on the fact that one side is using its own population as human shields and has built terror tunnels, which are in fact the largest bomb shelters ever built by our species, and not letting any civilians into them as a strategy to produce collateral damage on their own side so as to win this war of public opinion against their enemy, Israel. And that has succeeded, by the way, because the world is filled with useful idiots. If you're not going to do any of that analysis and just say there's just been too much death, there's too many dead babies, right? And you're going to call that a genocide, you're imagining that it is making you somehow, it represents some kind of moral progress, right? Now it's just, now we're going to inflate the awfulness of war to genocide. Whenever it's too awful, whenever we don't like it, whenever there's too much collateral damage, it's now genocide. That's moral progress. We're more and more sensitive now to killing and death and destruction, etc. It's not moral progress. What it's done is it's just forfeited our ability to make important moral distinctions, right? We need a moral vocabulary that distinguishes the people who are really trying to eradicate everyone of a certain type, whatever that type is, right? Men, women, and children. People don't know what actual genocides are like if they think what happened in Gaza is a genocide.